Hello my friends, HM here. I make videos about topics that are important for whether the future of humanity will be better or worse. Today's video investigates how Europe has dealt with the shutdown of gas supply from Russia. So what is the situation right now? How serious is it? And what will happen in the future with the Russian gas supply? With that said, let's get to it. Okay. So let's start this presentation by looking at some graphs that I found on BBC that shows Europe's gas supply from December 2021 to December 2022. It shows that Norway domestic production and other pipeline production is almost the same when we go 1 year ahead. But what has changed completely is Russia has dropped from 21 to 4, so a big drop. And LNG has, on the other hand, increased from 14 to 25. Everything else stays pretty much the same. And also the total supply was 77 in 2021 and it has dropped to 69 at the end of 2022. So what does that compare to in percentages? Well, Russia's share of EU gas supply in December 2021 was 27.3% and it dropped to 5.8% at December 2022. And also we can see that this reduction from 77 to 69, that compares to a 10.4% reduction in Europe's gas supply. The problem with these data is that it says that what it measures here is monthly gas supply to EU 27 plus UK in million cubic meters. It's definitely not million cubic meters on a monthly basis because that doesn't add up. I know that EU's annual supply is over 400 billion cubic meters per year, so I'm not really sure what they measure. It can't even be daily or what it is, so I had to find some other sources than this. But what I've been able to establish is that BBC got the measurement unit completely wrong, but the data here seems to be right in proportion. So, and this figure is pretty good at showing the proportional change. So let's look at the real numbers with the real nominations. I found these two graphs. It shows Europe's gas import not including own supply. The data we had from BBC did include own supply, that means domestic production on the European continent. But they include most of the data we need. It's depicted in weekly gas imports in millions cubic meters. And we can see here these numbers are quite different from the 21 that BBC showed us. That was million cubic meters. Here we are seeing that every week at the start of 22 it was 6,700 million cubic meters in 1 week. So we can see that adds up to almost 400 billion cubic meters in a year, as I could remember the data was. Anyway, let's take a few calculations on it now that we know we have the right data. Here we have Russia's share of EU gas imports in week 52 in 2021. That was 35.8%. And here on the right side of my slide here, you can see import from Russia. And we can also see here at the start that the dark red here is 2022 and the Ukraine war began around here, and where Russian imports was about 2,000 cubic meters per week. And then we started to increase import here in EU because I guess we were expecting that something bad could happen and was just about getting our stocks filled before that bad stuff happened, to buy us a little more time to prepare for other suppliers. So we bought a lot of gas here. We increased our gas supply, and then Putin started to play games and started to lying about that there were technical problems. They couldn't supply that much gas, and plus Europe didn't supply them with some kind of pumping station that they had to be delivered from Canada and so forth. All kind of lies. We were complying with our part of the agreements, but Putin was not. He was lying. So he started to cut down the gas supply to Europe, and when everybody was laughing at his lies, then he decided, okay, let's blow up Nord Stream pipeline, and he did that. Of course he did that, because then he didn't have to lie. And then of course the European gas supply dropped all the way down to about 500 million cubic meters, and that's where it is now. Okay, so here we can see Russia's share of EU gas imports in week 52. As I said, it was 35.8%, so somewhat higher than BBC's numbers, but it's also not exactly the same weeks and months. Here we're doing it weekly and BBC's was monthly. And Russia's share of EU gas imports in week 9, 2023, that's the latest data I could get, that's 8.8%. And then the reduction in EU gas imports from week 52 in 2021 to week 9 in 2023, that's 12.3%. So what else? We can see the data here shows that EU gas imports in 2021, that would be this light red line here, that would be that one here. It's about, a guesstimate when you look at these data is that it's about 6.7 billion weekly times 52 weeks. And then we get to 348 billion cubic meters. But remember, it doesn't include own supply, and these data also do not include UK gas production. But I'll get to that in a moment. Data also shows here that gas imports from Russia in 2021 was about 2.7 billion weekly, and then times that with 52, that's 140 billion cubic meters, and we can see that up here. So that's what that shows. And then what else do we have? We have that data shows that gas import from Russia in 2023, that would be the blue one here. It looks like it's going to be 500 million cubic meters for the rest of the year. So multiply that with 52 and we get 26 billion cubic meters that are left of the Russian export to the European Union, down from 140 the year before. So it's a big drop. Let's get to the next slide here. So this slide here shows Europe's gas production's own supply, not including UK and Norway. And that's what we see in this graph over here. And as you can see, Europe used to produce quite a lot of gas themselves on the continent, over 200 billion cubic meters of gas, and was primarily Holland who discovered a big gas field. But now it has been emptied out pretty much, and we're down to 44. EU's gas production in 2021 was 44 billion cubic meters, and also UK's gas was 33 billion cubic meters. I've looked that up elsewhere, and I have in my documents here below that you can download below, I have all the links to these sources I have here, so you can check it out yourself. Okay, and the 33 billion of UK gas there, that was nearly nothing of that was sold to EU, so it doesn't affect the import numbers that we just studied in the previous slide. And you can see that nothing was really sold to the EU, because here we have UK and their gas export to Europe, and you can see for 2021 it's this pale red graph here, and it was actually negative here, meaning UK in the start of the year they imported gas from Europe, and then it went positive, they exported some gas to Europe for the rest of the year here, but for the whole year it's pretty much zero. And then another thing you can see here, because it has these other years, 2022 and 2023 included, something very interesting can be looked here on these graphs. In 2022, when the Ukraine war started, UK started to export a lot, more than they have ever done in history, to Europe. And they could do that because UK actually had excess supply to import liquefied gas from the United States and elsewhere. And they could then take that in the UK harbors and then pump it into the European gas net that needed this gas drastically, because Russia was cutting down their gas supply to us. So here you can see the UK started to export 600 million cubic meters of gas weekly. And then at the end of the year, it actually dropped a bit, because Germany started to open some temporary LNG import terminals, plus the winter turned out to be milder than we expected. So we didn't need all that gas. We actually had too much gas at the end of the year. And that's also when gas prices started to rocket down. Thank God for that, because they were insanely high, but we'll get back to that. So what else do we have here in this graph? We have that data shows that EU's gas imports, including UK and Norway, in 2021 was about 348 billion cubic meters. That's what we saw from the previous slide. So what we can infer from that is that EU's gas supply, including UK domestic production, in 2021 was 348 plus the 44 billion that EU produce on the continent, plus UK's 33. That give us the 425 billion cubic meters per year of gas that I knew that I could remember that EU had. I read a lot of statistics. I have a PhD degree in economics, so I just like to read statistics everywhere. And so I have these numbers in my head. So whenever I read an article, then I can spot if there is something wrong with the data. And believe me when I say that there's a lot of journalism that's full of BS measurement and statistics because they just get it wrong very, very often. Just like the BBC got it wrong, unfortunately, that the quality of this journalism isn't higher. Okay, what else? Data shows that gas imports from Russia in 2021 was about 2.5 billion per week. That's 140. That's what we got from the previous table. And so with this data, we can now see that Russia's share of EU gas in the full year of 2021 was 33%. That's really what it was. And also Russian share of EU gas supply, including domestic supply in week 9, is about 7.1%. So, and I have the calculation here. So let's move to the next slide here. I want to show you which country was importing Russian gas in 2021 when Russia was still exporting gas in full scale to Europe. And that was, as you can see here from this graph, it was Germany. By far, they took more than 1/3 of all Russian gas, which was 140 billion cubic meters per year. So Germany took 56 of that, and then followed by Italy, Holland, France, Poland, Spain, and Belgium. Also Hungary. All of these countries, with the exception of Hungary, have dropped their gas import today to 0. Hungary is still importing gas in full from Russia. So apparently they are siding with Putin, and that is, of course, treason. You need to stand with your friends and put Russia under sanctions, or it's treason if you don't stand with your friends but side with the enemy. That's my opinion. And also I think for that we should tell Hungary that they should leave the European Union. They really don't belong there when they side with Putin, who's killing people in Ukraine and want to suppress them and take away their democracy. That's completely unacceptable. They cannot be part of the European Union. They should get out. But there are still a few other countries, apart from Hungary, who are still importing a little bit of Russian gas. We know that because the previous slides showed that Russia was still selling 500 million cubic meters of gas per week, and Hungary import is about 137 million cubic meters per week. We just divide 7.1 billion that they had last year with 52 months, and that'll give us this million per week. So we know that there are 363 million cubic meters that are still imported to EU that are not Hungary, and they are Greece and Romania import a little bit of Russian gas still, but I think that will fade out in not so long when the supply to Europe has been fully secured with new LNG terminals and so forth. But I'll come back to that. And also should we mention that Turkey still import Russian gas in full. Turkey, they don't side with Russia for sure because they're blocking the Russian fleet from entering the Black Sea and bombarding Ukraine. So they're clearly helping Ukraine with that. And they also help them with exporting grains so they can keep that export going. But then again, Turkey still buy Russian weapons. They still buy Russian gas. So to me, they are behaving very opportunistically. They just do what's good for Turkey and they don't really think about morale or ethics. They act very much like China in my opinion. I don't quite like them, to be honest. Like I don't quite like China, but they're still not completely evil, not completely good either. They're just opportunistic. I wish they were better than that, but they're not. So the next slide here is about Europe's gas pipelines. It shows the gas pipeline, how Russia could actually export their gas to Europe. And there are 4 main pipelines. One that's the North Stream that has been blown up now by Russia, so that went to 0. And then there's one through Poland, and Russia early on shut that one down, so it's not pumping anything either. But then there's one here from Ukraine, and it's still pumping because it supplies Hungary. And Ukraine don't want to shut it down because if they shut it down, then Russia will have nothing that stops them from start bombing electricity power plants that keep that line operational, and also bombing the Ukraine gas infrastructure. And Ukraine don't want that, so they still accept that the trader Hungary can get some gas through that pipeline, and Russia would like to keep supplying their trader Hungary. So it's a kind of a funny situation, but I expect the gas to keep flowing in Ukraine because currently it's in everybody's interest. So I've already talked about this. Yeah, I think I covered all of it. The only pipeline that's still pumping in full speed, that's the pipeline down here to Turkey. That's the 4th pipeline, and it's supplying Turkey, and then it's also a little bit that moves on to Bulgaria Bulgaria and Romania and Greece. And that's, like I said in the previous slide, there was like 350 million cubic meters of gas per week. That was not Hungarian, and that's probably what comes in from this side here, plus a little bit from this Ukraine pipeline that also supplies some gas down here. Okay, I kind of forgot I had some statistics that shows exactly how much gas Russia is pumping from each of their 4 main pipeline systems into Europe. This one here shows how much they were pumping from Nord Stream. They used to pump 1,200 million cubic meters of gas per week. Then they started to lie about that they had technical problems. That was here in 2022 in the middle of the year, and then they blew it up here in week 36. And since then, of course, it has been zero. And also in this Yamal pipeline, which is a Polish pipeline from Russia and into Europe, they ended pumping from that system in week 19. That was also Russia's decision. But what has kept going is this Ukraine transit pipeline. It's at around 200 million cubic meters of gas from Russia through Ukraine, and about 140 of that is going to Hungary, as we just talked about, and then there must be 70 that's going to Greece or something, Romania, or maybe even some of it is pumped back to Ukraine, so they have gas that way. But I know for a fact that Ukraine is not buying any gas from Russia directly. That stopped many years ago, but they still allow this transit, and they are paid by Russia for this transit as well. So that's another reason why Ukraine might keep it going, because they are paid a little bit, and it prevents Russia from bombing their gas infrastructure and also power plants that supply this gas pipeline with electricity for pumping stations and so forth. And then we have the last pipeline system is the Turk Stream, and it also pumps about 200 million cubic meters per week. But you can see these pipelines, both Ukraine and Turk Stream, are tiny compared to what Nord Stream was at 1,200, and also the Polish that used to be 800 million per week. So the next slide here shows Europe's gas consumption dropping from January 2022 to January 2023. We can see down here, the top of the dark green curve here is the average calculated from 2017 to 2022. And the top of this light green curve here is not the average as the graph says, but just the actual consumption of gas. Again, somebody who made this figure didn't know how to write the right terms. Here it's an average, the dark green, and here it's just the actual consumption. And what it shows is that we have started to consume less and less European gas than we normally would do in the same period in the year, because of course it depends on the season. In the summer we don't consume as much gas as we do in the winter period. So, but we can see when we reach January 2023, we actually drop our gas consumption by 22.1% here in January. That's pretty good. That's an enormous cut from our normal gas consumption, and compare that to that Russia was supplying 27.3% of EU's gas supply in December 2021, and for all of the year of 2021 it was 33. We are almost, simply by cutting our own consumption, we have almost cut the need for Russian gas. So saving on our gas consumption can pretty much make up for lack of Russian imports. And also we should see that EU gas supply was down 10.4% in 2022. So that means we have, despite this crisis, Europe has managed to increase its stock of gas. We could have had an even bigger crisis and gone through this and still have enough gas. That's why this crisis is over. Yes, we got help from a mild winter, but the thing is, we have had 1 year to find ways to save our gas consumption, and we are not done with that. We will continue to lower our consumption of gas. One of the reasons we can continue, or we have an incentive to continue to lower our gas consumption, is that the gas price is still quite high, like 80-70% above its normal level, and companies are substituting gas burning with heat pumps. Also private people who burn gas to keep their houses warm, they substitute with heat pumps, but it takes time to build these heat pumps, and we have had 1 year to build extra many heat pumps, but we will keep building heat pumps until we don't consume as much gas as we do today. In fact, I think as times go on, we will eventually cut gas consumption to zero. We don't need gas in the future. We can just use heat pumps, and we can put up more solar and wind to supply the electricity to those heat pumps, and then some battery storage for leveling out the energy needs in the grid. And there are also other things we can do. I've talked about that in another video on my channel. I'm sure you can find it. Anyway, the conclusion is from this table is that I'm absolutely 100% sure that Russia will never ever sell gas to us again. And good for that, because they are our enemy now. We know it. We shouldn't do any business with the enemy. Okay, but also I want to show you that the EU gas consumption reduction has been very uneven. Some countries have had to reduce their consumption a lot more than other countries, and specifically Finland, Sweden, Estonia and Latvia, they reduced their gas consumption between 33 and 57%. You can see it down here. The reason is that they didn't have any good options to get gas elsewhere, so they had to cut hard, and they managed to do so. And Putin here has lied about that in Europe we freeze to death because we don't have any Russian gas. And the fact is, we barely noticed. Everybody have had the gas they wanted to spend. But of course we have made efforts to cut it and substitute with something else. Power plants are using more coal. We are continuing to build more wind and solar, have sped up that installation of wind and solar. And then I just mentioned the heat pumps. We are installing heat pumps like never before to replace gas with heat pumps. But we did notice that the price shot up dramatically in the summer of 2022, and then they dropped again almost as dramatically at the end of the year. And let's talk a little bit about that you can see here. That's the EU gas prices. These gas prices, by the way, are very different from the US gas prices. Well, I'll come back to that shortly. Here we can see in January 2022, the UK gas price was about 200 British pound per million thermal unit. I think it's called THM. And this is this graph up here. So it goes here from, I don't know, 50 pounds up to 600 pounds. Can you imagine that? I know most of my audience here for my channel, I can see they're mostly from the United States, but can you imagine a gas price that goes from 50 to 600? That's 12 times more than it used to be. We could see that in our gas bills, I can assure you of that. And now it's back to 116 here. Still too high, but there are two gas prices in Europe, one for the UK and one for the Central European continent. That's a TTF gas price, and that's the one that are shown right here. They are fairly correlated, but not entirely. Stuff can happen in the UK that means that the gas price is not the same to what it is on continental Europe. And also the gas price in continental Europe is traded in euro, and the unit it measures is also different. It's a megawatt hours, where it's these million thermal units in Britain. And also that one shot up dramatically from a level of 25 to almost 350 at its peak, and now it's down to 46. So how much money is that at this rate? Well, at 46 euro per million watt hour, Russia's 2021 export to Europe of 140 billion cubic meters, that would have earned Russia almost 70 billion euro. So a very large amount of money. And now Russia looks to sell at most 26 billion cubic meters of gas in all of 2023, and that's worth 12.5 billion euro. But that's under the assumption that they can keep selling 500 million cubic meters of gas every week, as we have seen they've done for a couple of months now. But that's not gonna happen. Russia will sell less than that, because the only country that will keep buying gas from Russia is the trader, Hungary, and they only buy 7 billion cubic meters per year. The other billions of cubic meters is Greece and Romania and so forth, and once they have alternative supplies, then they will also stop buying Russian gas. That's just a matter of time, then they stop. And then all Russia will have back is like a quarter of these 12 here. That will be like 4 billion euro in gas sales to Hungary. And then the price will also drop further from its current high level, because the United States, when they really start to sell gas to Europe, the market will be flooded with gas, and the price will drop back to its normal 25 euro per million megawatt hour. Then there will be like 2 billion euro market for Russia, the entire European market, down from potential of 70 billion euro. It'll be nothing, and will never be LNG back. So we can see here Putin is crying. He will keep crying until his death. It's the biggest mistake he has ever done in his political career to attack Ukraine for sure. He will go over in history as a complete loser and as an evil person. He's a failure. And there are other reasons why Europe won't need the Russian gas, and that's that we are building more of these LNG import terminals. You can see here, this is a map of terminals that can import liquid natural gas. Gas is liquidated and pumped into ships, and then they are sailed to these ports where they are then gasified again. The liquid gas is gasified and pumped into the grid and the storage system. And you can see Southern Europe has lots of these terminals, so they're pretty well equipped with that, but Northern Europe lacks some capacity, especially Germany, who import lots of piped Russian gas, but Germany have planned 2 big permanent LNG import terminals, and they have set up 3 temporary import terminals. That are some big ships that sail in, and then you connect these big ships that has all the equipment for taking liquid gas in and gasifying it, and they have been set up. I think Germany has a plan to set up 7 of these temporary big ships. And then Sweden is also planning to build one, and Finland is already building 2. And then that would be Estonia and Latvia. Up here, they're also planning to set up some gas import terminals. So it'll take a little longer. I'd say by the end of 2025, we will have all the infrastructure we need in plenty to import all the gas we need from elsewhere. We don't need Russian gas. But it's already, as we have seen, we don't really need any Russian gas anymore. And also Denmark, I'm from Denmark, and together with Poland, we've been building a gas pipeline from Norway to Denmark and Poland. And we've been actually building that for 4 years or something. We've been at it, and it was just lucky that that pipeline was finalized and operational at full speed by the end of 2022. So now we no longer in Poland or Denmark have any Russian gas. We have piped Norwegian gas. Something I can tell about Denmark is that we are actually producing enough gas in the North Sea to cover our own needs. But instead of consuming that ourselves, that gas, then we send it to England because the North Sea is here and our gas fields are here. It's actually better for us to just sell it to the UK market, that gas. And then, we bought Russian gas and had that pumped into Denmark. But now that has been replaced 100% with Norwegian gas. And, again, the conclusion is that Russia is forever history in terms of selling gas to Europe. It'll never come back. And the next question is, who will sell liquid natural gas to Europe? The short answer to that is that would be United States, because they are already a massive exporter of gas to Europe. You can see here in this graph that shows that in 2016, the US exported non-liquid natural gas, but then they started building these export terminals for liquid natural gas. And just a few years later, 2023, they were at 12 billion cubic feet of gas every day. That's a lot of gas in a very short amount of time. It makes the United States the world's largest exporter of liquid natural gas, and it compares to 2.3 billion cubic meters weekly. You could probably remember that Russia was exporting 500 million cubic meters weekly in March 2023. So United States is now a much bigger exporter of gas just from their liquid natural gas export than Russia is in pipe gas to Europe. Quite remarkable. Also, the value of US LNG export annualized from 12 billion cubic feet daily level at this TTF price of 46 euro per megawatt hour. That would be 60 billion euro. So that export, if it's all exported to Europe, they can get 60 billion euros for it. So it's quite a big thing. And it looks like they are continuing to build more export terminals so they can export even more gas, and they will earn more money exporting this. So the next question we should ask is US selling LNG to Europe good business? And again, the short answer to this, yes, this is very good business. Gas costs a lot less in the US than it does in Europe. So it's good business to produce LNG in the US and then ship it to Europe. However, it's quite hard to see it right away because in the US, the gas is traded as US dollars per million BTU. And here in Europe, we are trading it in euro per megawatt hour. So you need to do a calculation where you use the currency exchange rate and also convert these units mega BTU into megawatt hours in order to make that calculation. I've done that in a spreadsheet that can be downloaded by following the links below this video. The thing is that currently US gas is trading for $2.43 per million BTU. That's a price graph we see here. That's 5 years of US gas prices on the US market, and currently today it's $2.43. And we can see up here the European prices, these 46.5 euro per megawatt hour. And how much is that in US dollars per million BTU? Well, it's $14.5 per MMBTU. So that's how expensive gas still is here in Europe. And can you imagine? It used to be 350 in the summer. It was 350 euro, 8 times more expensive. So you multiply that. Gas was like $100 per MMBTU, $100 here in Europe, and you compare that to $2.4 in the United States. That's just mind-blowing that price differences like that can exist, but it did, at least in the summer. Now it looks more reasonable, but it's still quite a big difference. And of course it pays to liquefy the gas in the US and then ship it. And how much does it cost to liquefy one of these units, MBTU? Well, it costs $3, and then to transport it by ship, it costs $0.50. So basically US gas export total cost would be those $2.4 for the gas in the United States, add $3 to liquefy it, and add $0.50 to ship it. So that would be, the United States can sell gas at a profit to Europe at $6 per million BTU. That would be less than half of the current price it currently has of $14.5. So United States can make money even if it drops to 25 euro per million BTU. That was the old price it was before all this crisis with Russia started. You can see it up here. In a year or two, I think the price will drop back to that level because the US will simply pump more gas to the Europe market, and the market will be flooded, and the gas price will be normalized at what it used to be. That's what will happen. And now we have arrived to the conclusion, and what we have seen is that Europe have dropped its imports of gas from Russia to only 7% now of its total gas supply. It used to be 33%, and Hungary is really the only EU country that still import Russian gas in full. Everybody else, if they have anything left, they are working at eliminating it entirely. And Ukraine, they accept this import from Hungary, which is only 137 million cubic meters per week, because it prevents Russia from targeting Ukraine gas and electricity infrastructure that is needed for Russia to export this gas to Hungary that clearly side with Russia and not NATO or European Union. And Euro has cut already its gas consumption by 20% by March 2023, and we continue to cut our gas consumption because the price of gas is still too high at those 46 euro per megawatt hour. It should be about 25 to 30 euro to be completely stabilized at what it used to be. And United States can deliver that, as we just saw. And also Europe has enough temporary LNG import terminals now to cover its needs, and we'll have plenty of permanent terminals by the end of 2025. The conclusion is that Russia has clearly shown by this invasion of Ukraine that they are our arch enemy, and we cannot rely upon them for anything, because all they want to do is really to conquer our land and our people and suppress us, and we need to cut all economic activity with this evil country and end it. I expect all remaining ties to Russia will be cut when we get to it. You shouldn't have even tourism with Russia. It should be cut completely. You should have no academic cooperation with them or anything. We should also not do any sports together with them. Just cut them out. They are bastards and we shouldn't have anything to do with them. That's my opinion. And then I have some sources and attribution for the previous slides. You can find them in a document below here that you can download yourself and check out all my sources that I haven't made any errors. If you found this video interesting, consider giving it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching my video. I wish you a healthy and fulfilling life in freedom and democracy.